while we're setting that up, first of all, thank you for coming tonight. We were wondering about if the snow was going to make things problematic today, but looks like the snow kind of said hi and left. So thank you all for those who made it. And of course the prasadam tonight will be amazing as always. So if that was not enough of a reason to come and tolerate some blabbering for an hour, then I don't know what to tell you. But seriously, so all of us are not here by accident. This was a choice we made to come here this evening. So we are grateful that you have chosen to give us some of your time. One of the most important things we have in our life is time, because we have such little of it. So to spare even about a couple hours, for something that, may not give you anything materially, beneficial, maybe the food, well, definitely the food, but otherwise, stuff that we have to work out in our head and our hearts, for some, that's like a good waste of time. But thankfully for all of us in this room, we chose to give it a shot. So I appreciate that. So do we here at the temple, at the Bhakti School. So please give yourselves a round of applause for coming. So before we begin, we have just a couple of quick ground rules. Number one is those little devices that are like our appendages, please make sure they're off or silent. For the next hour or so, I'd like us all to be here together rather than, somewhere else. And second, don't be afraid to participate. I am the kind of person that likes to pick on people. That if I have a question that I would like to get answered. So if you don't mind, forgive me in advance if I call you, because we are in a safe space. I'm sure you've heard that plenty of times now at work, at social events. So your opinions matter, your thoughts matter. Srila Prabhupada, the founder of the Krishna movement, he would call these gatherings meetings. And that's a very loaded thing to say, to call a meeting, because in a meeting, for those of you who go to work, something's coming, I hope. Okay. So for those of us who know, when you're at a meeting at work, it's all equal, right? You all have a seat at the table. That means your voice matters, your opinion matters. So in this, our spiritual meeting, our voices all matter. So don't be afraid to use them. And thirdly, I'd like us to begin with a quick 1-minute meditation that requires us to sit up straight, close our eyes, and we'll chant a mantra. If you know the mantra, you can please repeat. If you don't know it, that's okay. Just open your ears and open your hearts, and the mantra will find you. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Please repeat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, I'm sure all of us know what tomorrow is, right?
February 14th.
That's not what the people in the commercial world want us to know.
It's Wednesday.
So tomorrow is February 14th. It is a very interesting day. Oh, forgive me, I still have work stuff I'm working on.
Wednesday.
Huh?
Wednesday.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So it is the infamous Valentine's Day, right? 14th of February. a holiday that was made up by corporations to take money from us.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, I agree.
All right, let's get an amen on that one.
Be bold to that.
Where did Matanga go?
Disappearing.
If someone could find him. So, I was reading a wonderful book written by Srila Prabhupada called The Krishna Book. How many of you have heard of that book?
I've heard of it. Somebody told me about it the other day. So,
Okay, so we're gonna hover in that space today. So, the story of that book is actually quite, very relevant to this whole Hare Krishna movement. When the Swami Bhaktivedanta came to America, he came with a mission, which was to spread the teachings of Krishna. But very soon after he got here, he realized that not only do I need to share the message of Krishna, I need to tell people who he is. His prayer, one of the prayers that we chant when we meditate on Swami Bhaktivedanta is Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. It's a Sanskrit which means that he has come to the Western lands to save it from voidism and impersonalism. Which means that his mission was to show that God is a person, not a spirit. I don't know why it's not.
I think it's extended instead of mirrored.
Yeah, but I'm trying to make it a mirror. It doesn't. You're a tech guy. Figure this out. I'm like struggling. I have like a 20-year-old over here. So, he realized that I have to share the identity, the information. There we go. Thank you, sir. Perfect. I think we can tolerate that green stripe, yes?
yeah.
Okay. Okay, slideshow. All right. So, he wanted to present the story of Krishna. Now, thankfully for us in the Vedic tradition, we know all about him, because there's a wonderful book called the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavad Puran, which is the last, believe it or not, the last of the Vedic literatures. The compiler of the Vedas, Vyasa, he put together a compendium of all knowledge which encompasses Vedic thought and theology and spirituality into 4 books called the Vedas. And then he put together a series of smaller books like Cliff Notes called the Upanishads, where he took different sentences and he compiled them together, which have a lot of meaning and can be unpacked in so many ways. And then he put together, all sorts of supplementary literatures. And then he put together the histories of the universe, which are the Puranas. And there were 17 of them. And then he put together a wonderful little summary compendium of the whole thing that he put together, the Vedanta Sutra. But he felt really, sad, like, I don't think I did enough. And thankfully his guru, his teacher, came at that right moment and told him, well, have you put together just a literature that talks about Krishna, which is the goal of all of this? And he was like, actually, I haven't. And Narada Muni said, that's your last book to write. And he compiled it. It's called the Srimad Bhagavatam. And it basically begins where the Vedanta leaves off. So towards the end of the Bhagavatam is a whole big book called the 10th Canto, Dasamaskanda, which is the story of Krishna. So Swami Bhaktivedanta wanted to put this into a version that people could understand at the get-go. And it took him about 3 years. He came to New York in 1965, actually not far from here, where the Home Depot is where Swami Bhaktivedanta landed on a cargo ship, from a cargo ship. And then, while writing other books and leading a growing society, he put together this compendium, this summary of the 10th canto called the Krishna book. But he needed someone to help print it. And at that time, which is 1969 now, the Krishna devotees invaded Europe, specifically London. And they made a connection with 4 famous people, I think the most famous people on the planet at that time. Any guesses? The Beatles, correct. George Harrison specifically, he was known as the philosophical Beatle of the 4 of them. And George Harrison helped them get established in England. He helped them get a temple going, get a record out there on the Apple label, and then he helped finance this book. And the Swami was so pleased with this contribution that he asked him to write a foreword or a note for this book. And that's this. So I'd like all of us, since we're in a class, let's read this and let's see if we can unpack this a little bit. Would anyone like to take a turn in reading? Yes, Krishna.
Everybody is looking for Krishna.
Louder, please.
Everybody is looking for Krishna. Some don't realize that they are, but they are. Krishna is God, the source of all that exists, the cause of all that is, was, or ever will be. As God is unlimited, he has many names. Allah, Buddha, Jehovah, Rama, all are Krishna, all are one. God is not abstract. He has both the impersonal and the personal aspects to his personality, which is supreme, eternal, blissful, and full of knowledge. As a single drop of water has the same qualities as an ocean of water, so has our consciousness the qualities of God's consciousness. But through our identification and attachment with the material energy, physical body, sense pleasures, material possessions, ego, etc., our true transcendental consciousness has been polluted. And like a dirty mirror, it is unable to reflect a pure image.
Thank you. So we're not going to read all of this. I mean, it's not much more to go. But the last part of this little foreword was handwritten by George himself. And this is the title of our talk today. All You Need Is Love, brackets, Krishna. How many of you heard this phrase, all you need is love? Right? It was a song that was written by John Lennon a few years earlier in 1967. And it was a very pop hit, right? She loves me, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, right? And when asked, John Lennon said, well, I know these are some of the popular catchy slogans. You know, there's so many of them out there with the Vietnam War and this and that. So I wanted to put a song of slogans together, and this would work for me. And then George gave that song a purport with the brackets. All we need is love, brackets, Krishna. Pretty powerful, isn't it? So today I just wanted to see how we can get from that word love to Krishna. And I hope we can get there. Oh, thank you. Hope we can get there together. All right. What is love? Anybody? Anybody?
Attachment.
Huh?
Baby, don't hurt me.
Okay, Baby Don't Hurt Me. That's a song, right? All right. Yes. Yes, Prispanjali.
Love is unconditional.
Okay, that's a qualification of love. But what is it? Yes.
According to Eric Fromm, The Art of Loving, its 4 components is responsibility, caring, responsibility. There's 2 more.
Okay, those are aspects, but what is it? Yes, thank you though.
It's like giving service, you know, without the attachment of what's coming back and outcome.
Okay, it's an action. Okay? Yes.
I would say it's attachment.
It's an attachment. Okay, that's another description of it.
Relationship.
It's another description of it. Yes.
It's a feeling.
A feeling. Okay. Something we can't put into exact boxes, right? You can't quantify it. It's a feeling. Anyone else?
An attraction or connection.
An attraction. Again, also a
Quality.
quality. But what is it? Now, what did you guys say? You said something. It was an action, right?
Service.
Service, right? This is how the love word originated. What we know today. Now, I'm a geek on etymology. I like to know how words break down and where they come from and all that, and try to understand how we got to this point. So love, in English, it's different origins. I picked 3 out of many. Lufu, Old English. How many of you speak Old English? Oh. Can you get my charger? It's in Prabhu Vishnu's office. It's on top of the file cabinet next to my desk.
Is it unlocked?
Huh? Just knock on the door, he's in there. Thank you. So, Lufu, which means something, which we'll find out. Then another word was, where did I have my phone?
Sounds like Lufu.
Lubet.
Huh? Lubet, right?
German.
Which is a German, right? But they all came from the Sanskrit word lub, L-U-B-H, lupa. And luba had many meanings, but the meaning which was consistent was the word desire. So, desire can have negative connotations, right? Whereas love, almost all of you had something positive, almost. Serving, caring, detachment, etc., etc. None of us had said, love is something mundane. So how did something spiritual come from something so mundane like desire?
Spiritual desire.
We'll get there, but yes. Desire comes from the Latin desidious. No, it's not a villain in Marvel Comics. Desidious comes from, broken up into 2 words, de and sidious. De means without or lack of, and sidious means stars. Stars, like in the sky. So, the word desire, thank you. The word desire means lack of stars in Latin, desidious, which many authors or philosophers equate desire meaning there's something lacking in our lives or in our existence which we want to fill. Right? Filling a void in our life. Thank you. The family that studies together stays together, yes? So, how did something so spiritual evolve from something so mundane? Right? Love is about giving and caring and sharing, whereas the definition, as per the origins that we read, was something very mundane, desiring, which means to fill something that's lacking within us. And the lack of stars, some opine, or that it means lack of illumination, lack of happiness, lack of... Alright, so lufu, lub, lubet, lub, Sanskrit. Lub means to desire, among other things. Okay, that's the next question. So that's where we are right now. Desire comes from desidious. Desidious means lack of stars. Lack of stars means there's something lacking that's positive or uplifting or something heavenly in our lives. Yes, sir?
Can I take a picture of the breakdown of the word?
Yes, you may. All right. So the reason why, from what I've read or what I've understood to date, is loving basically is finding something that regularly fills in that spiritual void in our lives. So if we were put on this earth, that means we must have a purpose, right? Otherwise, Why would we be searching for something to fill something within us? Yes? Anybody? Anyone wants to give a thought? I mean, how many of us have thought about love in this light? That I'm pursuing love because I want to fill something that's lacking in me.
I mean, if you connect deeply to it, you will actually come to that realization. But if you don't, then it's just like, oh, I love you. I tell my wife I love her many times. Do I give it back all the time? No, I don't. You see?
Welcome to the club.
you know what I mean? But not all the time I want to sit back and like cry myself a river because she might not correspond with the same expression when I expected. But she shows ways of, as I said earlier on, service in a detached
Yeah,
way.
that's called love language. Yeah, everybody has their own love language. Sure. So, but we're pursuing love because it's the highest thing we can pursue. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who was the spiritual founder of the Hare Krishna movement going back 500 years, he mentions the idea of prema pumartho mahan. Love is the highest goal of our existence. Now, wait a minute. Love, we define as lup, to desire. Now, where did this word prema come in? In Sanskrit, unlike English or some of the Latin languages or Germanic languages, there are many words to describe the same thing. And there's like different categories of quality attached to it, something positive, negative, spiritual, mundane, or material. So love or desire has two connotations. And both have a word in Sanskrit, which we'll unpack and see where it takes us. The first is, we'll do the lower one first, that is kama. Kama in Sanskrit means many things. It means desire, it means lust. Oh, very serious word now. It means, yes, I wasn't going to go that far, but thank you. Safe space, yes. Whereas prema, our saints and our teachers, they define that as love that's beyond. It comes from the word param. Param means which transcends material reality. So, believe it or not, all of us are looking for something to fill in that spiritual void. But most of us don't know what that is. As George wrote at the very beginning, everyone's looking for God, or Krishna. He was also in that same boat. He was looking for something, trying to figure out what was missing in his life. The funny thing is, most of us don't know we're missing something. Most of us go through our day, doing the normal thing. We get up in the morning, we have a cup of coffee, go to work, we live our life. But all of us know that there's something there are things in our day that just make our day so much better. Like, I love having my first cup of coffee in the morning. I love having a cup of tea before I get my day going. I love hanging out with my friends at happy hour on Thursdays. I love getting pizza from John's Pizzeria every day at lunch. Most of us, in our efforts to find love, we end up trying to find something material. Why? Because we want to please our senses. Kama, if we break that word down, ka means this, and ma means me. Kama simply means, this is for me to fill in that void. This is for me. This is for my enjoyment. So, speaking about that book which you mentioned, which I will not mention, It was, put together so that how can I enjoy? Or whether if the case of partners, how can each one of them can enjoy in that way? And that can apply to anything, not just that physical stuff. You can have lust over potato chips. I have to have this specific brand for me to feel right up with the world. Like, I'm an architect by profession, and I have to go to the building department a lot to get papers filled out and permits. And there was this is back in the day when nothing was online. You had to go in person to do everything. And there was this one clerk, her weakness was lollipops. And everybody knew that if you needed to get something extra done, you just needed to slide her a pack of Dum-Dums or whatever it was. Because that's what she needed to fill her void. And did she go through a lot of lollipops? I'm sure I hope she's doing better health-wise, but. So we're all in this material world, in these machines called human bodies, pursuing something. In the Gita, Krishna says, Ishvara sarvabhutanam riddesha arjun tishtati Brahmayam sarvabhutani yantra rudani mayaya. Yantra, machine. So Krishna says that he is sitting as a super soul in everyone's heart, watching all of these living entities drive their machines round and round in circles like kids in a bumper car game or ride at the amusement park. How many of you seen bumper cars at the amusement park? Right? That's all that happens for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then it's the next turn. So what are we chasing? What are we trying to fill? We're trying to fill in this material void. And the more we think we're finding happiness or love or peace or tranquility or whatever you want to fill in, the more difficult it becomes for us to stop. In the Gita, in the 7th chapter, Krishna says, Kame ste rita jnana prapadyante anya devata. When we get stuck in this cycle of lust, which is what kama basically means, our intelligence is taken from us, rita, stolen from us, ripped out of our hands by those lusty desires. And then we end up relying on other means for our happiness. External means, whether it be propagating other gods or deities, or following Taylor Swift on Instagram, or whatever it may be, right? And then tam tam niyama masthaya. If I feel some sort of happiness from that, some sort of like pleasure from that, then that becomes my practice. Every day I want to be an influencer like so-and-so, and I have to post 10 posts on Instagram daily with me doing 10 different poses and modeling 4 products. Then prakrita niyata swarat. And they fool themselves to think that I am the enjoyer, I am the controller, and I'm happy. And this whole thing, they call it love. But the reality is, it's an illusion. The other type of love here, prema. Prema means, like we said, is that which transcends, which is more in line with the Latin meaning of desire. Trying to fill in that void of lack of stars, which means we have to look up to see what's there, transcending. And in that type of love, we have just one person to love. Can anyone guess who that is? Krishna. Correct. Loving Krishna or loving God. How many of us have ever tried to do that? Yes? Tell me about your experience.
one of the reasons why I come to the temple, because I feel like the practices and the association that I find here gets me closer to being more consistent in my point of ideation towards what God, that which I feel it's like the love. In other instances, when I do all the other things that you just mentioned right now, I feel totally miserable. And I don't, and again, I could do 10,000 things and I'm just like, what's the point?
Right?
See? So, and I'm not saying this out of just like, well, I'm coming to the temple and you just speak beautifully about it. It is generally how I've been feeling for a while now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, to be honest with all of you,
That's where the Vedanta leaves off or begins. Vedanta begins with this simple phrase, Athato Brahma Jigyasa. I have awakened, and now I want to understand what is that absolute reality. Which means our eyes have opened to what's unfortunate with the world as it goes today. Yes, you try to love God. Explain your, yeah.
I don't know.
No, go ahead.
I'm still a beginner, I feel like. For me, when I chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra,
Yes.
I feel it's a purification process.
Yes.
I feel like my natural state is to be very materialistic, maybe lustful, and have desires that don't make me happy. But when I chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, I do feel pure and I feel more love.
Yeah. So, yes.
So you know when you try to look away from something, pretend it doesn't exist, and then you go back, you're like, wait, it's following me.
Yes.
It's following me. No
Sure.
matter what you do, what struggle, whatever you face, like it's there. Like, for example, I'm not from Brooklyn, I'm from Queens. But when I applied to this position, this material position, I was like, it's only for Radha Govinda. I could just be closer
Wonderful.
to the association. Got the material position because I thought of something transcendental.
Wonderful.
So that aspect of following, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You can't avoid it. It's everywhere around you.
Yeah.
The interactions that you have with people and the interactions you have within yourself, it just makes it clear.
Yeah.
So it's within you. And it exudes without. I'm sorry.
Exudes. Yeah. So, thank you. So this is real love. Real love brought you all here tonight. Real love means desiring to attract and have a relationship with Krishna. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Prema Pumartho Mahan. I didn't mention the beginning of the verse, which basically says, Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajeshitaniya Tadhama Vrindavana. Love is ultimately applied to the source of love, which is God. Now wait a minute, love is pretty subjective. How did you just make it quantitative? Well, in Krishna, who is the ultimate reality, everything subjective, objective, perspective, the source of all of that is Krishna. Krishna says in the Gita, Aham sarvasya prabhava mattha sarvam pravartate. He uses the word sarvam. Sarvam means everything. And if those of you statistics, you have different sets and subsets, whatever. This is the grand superset of all sets, sarvam. So even emotions come from Krishna. Feelings, talked about love as a feeling, comes from Krishna. Attachment comes from Krishna. This love languages of service and speech all come from Krishna. So prema means to now fill that void. Remember, desire means lack of stars. So how to fill in that lack of stars? So we want to fill that lacking in our life with something transcendental or someone transcendental, Krishna. Now someone might say, well, how do you know it's Krishna and not so-and-so? Well, the answer is given to us in these Vedic literatures. Swami Bhaktivedanta was once asked this question, why Krishna, why not so-and-so? And he said, well, the proof is in the pudding. We have saints and teachers over thousands of millennia that have consistently pointed this fact out, that Krishna is the supreme reality, and our duty in life is to have a relationship with Krishna and ultimately love him. And it's a consistent fact. So, in a nutshell, the highest form of love is that love of Krishna, and all of us can agree that love is something beyond reality or beyond conception at times, because it fills every part of our existence. And then it begins to transform our existence. There is a wonderful little literature called the Narada Bhakti Sutra. Sutra means short book, with a bunch of sentences by Narad Muni, who is one of the foremost authorities on the matters of loving God. And he says that the highest love, which is love of God, is bhakti, or devotional service, which means transforming our lives so that everything we eat, do, sleep, think, give away, accept, is all done with Krishna in mind. Now, how many of us are able to do that right now? I know I can't.
There can be glimpses occasionally, like you see,
Correct.
sometimes I feel I don't really even. I'm just gonna mention it because it pertains to this, but I don't even tell this to my mother or my wife, But like sometimes I'm on the street and New York is so on the face, it's not even funny. Sometimes stuff like blows up right there on your face and you're just like, oh my God, I have to assist. Why? Because this person at this age that looks like it's alone in this crazy city, that could be my father, that could be my mother. So there's moments in which, I assist in the best way possible, and then, I'm just like, Baba, be well. And I walk off. But like after that, it's like something overcomes me and I start crying because I feel like it feels like that love that we're talking about. And it didn't come from a hug, from, I don't know, a beautiful woman or my wife or whatever else, lures or satisfies those desires inside of me. It came from something that is totally different, and it gives off way much more satisfaction, like true satisfaction, than any other, superficial thing.
Right.
So I feel sometimes for me that's that's the closest today I felt to God, So
Amazing.
I don't know, just
That's basically where we're going, is like when we have that connection with Krishna, then how Krishna uses us is pretty magical. In the Gita, Krishna calls Arjuna Nimitta Matra Bhava Savya Sachin. You just be an instrument. Be the vessel through which I conduct my activities. Right? It requires us to literally get out of the way. And that's when, it goes from lust or kama to prema. And if you read the teachings of Swami Bhaktivedanta, in many places he talks about these two types of love. The material point of view is kama, where I'm trying to please my own senses, and prema, where I'm trying to please God's senses. Wait, God has senses? Of course he does. But his senses are transcendental, because he is transcendental. Therefore, the love with God or for God is transcendental, prema, because it is above, beyond reality. So how do I quantify something that's beyond this world? I can quantify love in this world by how many chocolate boxes I gave my wife for Valentine's Day, or how many times I was told I love you by my kids. How do I quantify spiritual love? Or how would I? It's a trick question, you can't. Because that love is so fulfilling and also recharging that we just want to keep ourselves plugged in to that love. I'll have a confession here since we're in a safe space. I love to eat pizza. Unfortunately, there was a time where I was eating pizza every day. I was on a trip to Greece and there wasn't much options there. So pizza became like the default. And it was literally lunch, dinner, leftovers, breakfast, lunch, dinner. And by the end of that trip, I was so sick of it, I was like, I could not ever eat a slice again. I can't say that about Krishna. Especially now that this practice that we are doing with the chanting and the philosophy, we're taking it somewhat seriously, it feels like recharging, isn't it? Like I just want to continue, or I want to make sure tomorrow I do better at it. Krishna Bhakti leads to Krishna Prema, or vice versa. So Bhakti is, Srila Prabhupada defines as devotional service. It's an active practice. Most historians and linguists and philosophers define it simply as devotion, which is a very abstract word. Swami Bhaktivedanta made it devotional service. That means something we have to do. And in the Gita, Krishna says, Vyat karosi yat asnasi yat juhoshi dadasi yat, 9th chapter, Yat tapasyasi konteya tat kurushva mad arpanam. All that you do, all that you eat, all that you give away in charity, do that as an offering to me. Why? Later in the chapter he says, Samoham sarvabhuteshu name dveshtasina priya ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mai te teshu chapyaham. If I'm stuck in this cycle of birth and death, it's because the karma machine is fully active. However, if I choose to turn my face towards Krishna, turn my attention, my thoughts, my actions toward Krishna, Krishna pulls you out of that cycle of karma and puts you on a path to his lotus feet. Why? Earlier he says, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nitya bhyuktanam yoga kshemam vahamyam. Nitya means constant, eternal. If we're constantly nitya yukta means yoga. Yoga means union. If we're constantly connected to Krishna through upasana means a steady practice. Right? None of us, how many of you heard this question? How do you get to Carnegie Hall? What's the answer?
Practice.
Say it.
Practice.
Practice. Right? So similarly, how do we go back to Krishna? Practice. So nitya yukta upasate. So if we're regularly connecting ourselves to Krishna, like this laptop has to be plugged in daily, otherwise, that's like we experienced earlier. We had a technical difficulty. Then, yoga kshemam vahamyam. Krishna himself carries what we lack and he preserves what we have. Materially? No, that's karma's going to deal with that. Spiritually. Right? Many of us depend on others for that loving relationship, right? I really depend on my wife or my children, my parents. We have a right to. Similarly, we have a right to depend on God for that loving relationship. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, one of our saints, I don't remember which one, he says, Avashya Rakhibe Krishna Vishwasapalan. Krishna is my protector, he will always care for me. Without love, I can't say that statement. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, he only wrote 8 sentences, or 8 paragraphs. The last one is, Asli Shiva Padaratam Binastumam. My Lord, you're welcome to do what you like with me, but my love for you is not going to diminish. because that love is, in itself, it's quite filling. What to speak about knowing who you're loving. So Krishna Bhakti, which Srila Prabhupada translates quite effectively as Krishna consciousness, is this daily practice which those of us in the Krishna consciousness movement do regularly, which I hope many of you are experimenting with or trying to do on a regular basis, where we begin to disconnect ourselves from the material world at a gradual pace and reconnect to Krishna. I don't know if any of you have seen what telephones were like 50 to 100 years ago. I could say 100 years actually. It's been around that long. There used to be these telephone exchange stations where it's a bunch of secretaries in long corridors literally just plugging wires. Because in the old days, you had to call, you might remember, you had to call, no offense, you had to call when you made your phone call, it would go to an exchange. You had to tell the exchange, where do you want this call to go to? And then they had to plug you into the right portal. It will go to the next exchange, and it carries on to your destination. So similarly, when we are practicing Krishna consciousness, we are now going to the spiritual exchange, where now every aspect of my life, this is the last one. So every aspect of my life, I am now exchanging from material to spiritual. And in the second chapter of Gita, Krishna already talks about this. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinam raso varjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. That if you want to be the ideal man, that end of the second chapter, which Prabhupada translates as the content of the Gita summarized, that basically explains the ideal person, the Krishna conscious person, which then is expounded over the next 16 chapters. So Krishna says that the devotees are those that can always make the better choice. They can always exchange material for spiritual because they have that higher taste. And earlier he says, Eke vyavasatmika buddhir eke he kurunandana. My thought, the devotee who is fixed in me, his thoughts, his focus is one. His aim is one, which is Krishna. So every part of my day, from morning to the minute I get up to the minute I go to sleep, the devotee is that person who is trying to connect every part of his existence to Krishna. And if that's not love, then I don't know what it is. Because all of us can agree that when we achieve that, or when we start feeling, like you said, that call to serve, or that compassion we feel for the living entities, that's a higher calling. It's not a mundane feeling, and this is what, Swami Bhaktivedanta had, which drew him to come to the States. His guru told him 30 years before he came that if you have any capacity, spread this teachings of Krishna in the Western language. And he told him later, if you have facility, print books to share this knowledge. But he was still a family man at that time. He had kids, he had a job, business, and everything. But that calling, as you said, would not shake him. And then 40 years later, he found himself on a cargo ship. Just like the pilgrims and the immigrants from 100 years before had come to the States, he came in that same humble way, just eager to share this knowledge of Krishna. And thankfully, he did that. Otherwise, all of us would not be sitting in this room today, right now, spending a couple of hours our time after witnessing a rather disappointing snowstorm. Hearing something that probably will open an eye or a heart or a mind to something higher. And fortunately, as George Harrison said, the proof is in the pudding. the best way to experience Krishna's love is to practice devotional service. And Swami Bhaktivedanta had told one of his disciples, what's the worst that could go wrong? Here at the Hare Krishna movement, all we do is sing and dance, and we eat nice food, and we talk about nice things. Is there any loss in this? And he said, suppose there might be some limitations, you might think, then no problem. You have so many more lifetimes to catch up in your material enjoyment. But at least this one lifetime, let's try to practice this love of Krishna. Because as George says, all you need is love, Krishna. And what time is it? Oh, we have plenty of time. So, any questions? Thoughts? This is a time where I get to now ask all of you to give some instant, impromptu feedback. Please share something.
So today I learned a lot about the meaning of love and how we can relate that to Krishna. And I could really connect with it, so it's really nice. And I will try to do more often and try to learn.
Wonderful. Yes, that's the beauty of Krishna consciousness. Every day is a new day. It's not like Groundhog's Day, where we do the same thing over and over again. Every day is a fresh start for us because we have the opportunity to reflect on what we did the previous day, and we have the opportunity to make it better. Like if I did my chanting yesterday and it was pretty crummy for whatever reason, today I want to try harder to get it right. So that's the beauty of Krishna consciousness. We never go wrong. Like for instance, if you expressing your love to somebody and they keep rejecting it, after a while you're going to feel bummed out. Why should I spend my time with this person? But with Krishna, that negative feeling never comes. Rather, the more we contemplate on Krishna, the more we think about Krishna, the more we act according to Krishna's desires. Now, someone will ask that question, why should I act according to someone else? Why can't I do my own thing? But the reality is, what is actually ours? This body is not ours. The air we breathe is not ours. The things that we work with, they're not ours. They're all Krishna's energies. Bhumi rapo nalo vayo kam mano buddhirevacha. These are all Krishna's energies. It's all his. And we just got a chance to use it for a little while. Right? I have two amazing daughters, and sometimes they're told, oh, you share with somebody. But if that person that child doesn't reciprocate, then they don't want to share anymore. Right? So, but Krishna is so kind that he is patiently waiting. How many of you have been to our temple upstairs? Have you seen Krishna, right? He's standing there with his flute. He's very peaceful. He's smiling. He's in no rush. He's a source of all time. Where does he have to go? So he is kindly waiting, patiently waiting for us to, realize that ultimately our relationship is with him. And through that relationship, it frames everything else we do in this world. Thank you. Anyone else? I'm going to start picking names. Oh, yes, go ahead.
Can I ask you about your experience on how you outlet your material work life as an architect, where you're striving for money in Krishna consciousness? How do you direct your energy or apply Krishna consciousness while you're at work?
Well, thank you. That's a very tough question. The principles of Krishna consciousness are universal. Right? There's in the Bhagavad Gita in the 18th chapter, the qualities of a Brahmana, right? 18th chapter. There's a whole list of qualities that are given: tolerance, seeing with equal vision. And these qualities we begin to develop while we're practicing Krishna consciousness, because every time something may go wrong in our day, we now have someone that we can turn to. simply as just remembering Krishna, today is not a good day, but I still got you. Or if something goes good, Krishna, thank you for this opportunity, let me use it in your service. It's how we frame the incident or the action or the activity in relation to Krishna. Right? Some of us may go through some tough times, you lose your job, you get divorced or whatever. But there's opportunities even in those difficult times for us to see what Krishna still has given us. Like there are like how many of you remember the great, what's it called? The great resignation. Heard of that? It was during the pandemic, but a good percentage of the workforce just resigned because they were just sick of it, right? and because the material rat race was so much for them. But the simple reality was that there's so much that they already had which they could not see. Krishna gave me a roof over my head. Krishna gave me facility to help others. Because of this job, I can support the temple. Right? And the Gita Krishna says, if you're not able to practice fully, support those who are, and you'll still come to me. So, spiritually speaking, when you practice Krishna consciousness, we learn how to be a Krishna conscious person. Meaning we frame everything in relation to Krishna. And then externally, if we have some facility, we use that in Krishna service. Either we ourselves go out and share Krishna with others, or we assist those who are. Like Tulsi Prabhu and the devotees here at the Bhakti School. Thank you for that plug. Yes, we have a few more minutes before we're going to do the most best part of the Krishna Bhakti practice. Yes, that's what I was talking about. Yes.
And also earlier you mentioned the Krishna book.
Yes.
The Krishna book. As a result of you speaking on that, I'm really anxious to learn more about who Krishna is.
Yes.
Which means reading, getting into the book more, or listening, the audio.
Yes.
Listening to understand who he is, what his desires are, and to know how I can serve him.
Yes.
Better. How can I serve him? I'm always asking that question. And I'll just share this with everyone. I mean, there was a time I was on a train and I said a little prayer. I said, Krishna, Krishna, please, how can I serve you more? And I was simply sitting down. Somebody was standing up and I just turned my head and I saw this sign that on their shorts, it said, just do it.
Yes, exactly. Just do it. That's what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, just slay your doubts with the sword of knowledge and act for me. The more you know, the better equipped we are to fight. And one of the challenges that we all face is, what is important for us to know and what isn't. How much points did the Super Bowl team won by? Is that important? Not really. But knowing what Krishna likes to do with his friends is quite important because then we begin to mold our activities in that consciousness because we also are Krishna's friend. Okay, one more for the road before we go to the best parts. Yes?
What can I do for you, Krishna? I'm always thinking about self-love. Because there's so much self-doubt, double guessing of who I am, what did I come to this life for? I'm not that beautiful, I'm not that deserving, I'm not that intelligent. The inner punishment is such sometimes that I will say confidently that if there's something that we can do for Krishna, to please Krishna, or just to at least share a little bit of that commitment that we have with Krishna, is beginning with some self-love, because it's totally unauthentic and hypocritical that we can let me share love with this person, with that other person, when we're being basically self-attacked, knowingly or unknowingly.
Yeah.
And this is something that is not constantly addressed in I don't know, wherever you go.
Well,
You know what I
you're
mean?
absolutely right. There's a famous actress, and she wrote a book that came out recently. Her ex-husband was famous for an incident where he slapped somebody on national television. That's all I'll mention about these people. So in the book, she mentioned that she was having a spiritual dialogue with one of the leaders of the Hare Krishna movement, actually. It's a true story. And and he was giving her a lot of not only advice, but also a lot of, techniques like chanting and reading to help, overcome whatever shortcomings she was feeling. And one time she had asked the Swami, when will I develop the power to forgive? And the Swami said, when you keep practicing Krishna consciousness, you will learn to forgive yourself. And that was not the answer that she was expecting. And what we learned from that is when we actually seriously take up this practice of Krishna consciousness, we learn to see how everything that's happening to us, whether good, bad, ugly, great movie by the way, is a direct reaction of the karma that we had done maybe in this lifetime or previous lifetimes. And the people through which someone was harmed, either the person or the self, they are simply vehicles through which we have to experience this karma. So the Swami advised, learn to forgive yourself, and then there's no one else left to forgive. So when we start connecting with Krishna, Krishna says, I carry what you have and preserve what you lack. That also, those feelings about self-doubt begin to disappear because I'm no longer alone. Krishna is with me by my side. Krishna is in my heart, holding my hand as we traverse through this material world. And then whatever challenge comes our way, whether it's the reaction of someone who we harmed in the past, or whether it's some financial, material, whatever difficulty, those become so easy to transcend because my consciousness, my heart's in the right place. And while I'm suffering, I know this body is temporary, this suffering is temporary. Krishna is eternal, so am I. And once we have that understanding, it's just a question of love and time. Not even time, just love. Because that love with Krishna is eternal. And Krishna says in the Gita that if by some chance you cannot achieve me in this life, no worries. In the next life, you pick up where you left off. So, right? So self-love is absolutely important. But we have to learn to love ourselves in our relationship with Krishna. And then it begins to make sense. All right, it is now 8:27. One final thought before we start the next activity tonight. Final. Going once. Going twice. All right, thank you very much.